But the davening we have in shul, I just feel compelled to come out of my 3-month vacation. Once every 3 months, we should dress up for davening appropriately. So I want to start off with a question today. Hope everyone is well. Another magnificent day. Hashem has blessed us, even in the midst of whatever fears we have, but we got to take the brachas. So I want to ask a question. Still some remnants from my post-Cholent musings on Shabbos, especially after the Cholent, as you'll hear the question. You know, in this past week's Parsha, they complained, we spoke about last night, the Messianim, and those hisavu taiva, they wanted to eat certain fruits. So the expression they said is, we remember, Zechanos Hadog, we remember the fish that we ate in Mitzrayim. And then it said, Es HaKishuim, Ves HaVatichim, Es HaChatzir, Ves HaBatarlim, Ves HaShumim. We also remember the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. Some of that goes into Cholent. And they remembered these foods, and they longed for them. Just a little strange, like, you know, this is what you want to go back for. That's the whole reason why you want to go back to Mitzrayim. So, but there's an interesting thing we learned. So the Gemara asks, don't we know that, I think Rashi said, don't we know that the mun tastes like everything you wanted it to taste? So why did they have to pine for these foods? Just think watermelon, just think cucumber. So the Gemara says, Chazal say, that these foods are detrimental to pregnant women and fetuses and the children inside. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't allow the mun to be able to take on these tastes because they would have an adverse effect on the nursing mother, the pregnant mother, the nursing mother, and the children that were in the fetus, the feti or the fetuses. So the question that plagued me is, I don't get it. It doesn't taste like those things unless you want it to taste that way. If indeed these foods have a detrimental effect, so why do you have to remove the taste? The women are going to eat something detrimental for their babies and for themselves, knowing that it's unhealthy. They're not going to think about it. Let everyone have their good time. And the pregnant women, they won't think about it, so it won't affect them. Why does Hashem have to take it away because of the pregnant women? That was the question. Okay. So what got me to think is as follows. And this is what I want to get to. You know, yesterday we spoke about there were two forces that, you know, we daven every day, the Oivecha and Mesanecha, the Kaisani, anxiety, and Taiva, the Oivecha is the Taiva, is Yishmael and Esav, you know, the passion, material urges, and emotional frustration. And we spoke about, you know, that's ultimately the greatest enemy. If we can conquer that, we're okay. Then we can, you know, serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Is there a correlation between these two? Between the Kasani, anxiety, so to speak, that leads to anger and all the other terrible things, and Hisabu Taiva, material urges. So I was thinking like this, you know, very often, you know, I'll start off with a joke. You know, someone sent me a meme, and I think maybe we can all relate to it. Maybe some of us, you know, we've all been more or less more sedentary than we have been in the last before 3 months. We're not going to the grocery store. We're not going to walking to shul. We're not going much. You know, what do we do? So, and inevitably we're all staying home for the most part. So someone sent me the following meme. It has a picture of a panda eating on a piece of wood. It says, on average, a panda feeds for approximately 12 hours per day. This is the same as an adult at home under quarantine, which is why we call it, this is for you, Bernie, a pandemic. A pandemic. So why am I bringing it? I really want to say something very serious. You know, very often we find, I think we all somehow, I mean, we've all gained, I mean, I gained, so I can't keep it off as I used to, because I just don't run around as much. I don't go swim. I recently found a place to swim, but not as mighty as I do in the JCC. So it's hard to exercise like I'd like to. But when we experience anxiety, there's a certain reaction that many of us have. When you get anxious and you're frustrated, where do we run to? Run to the fridge. You go to the fridge. You go for food. Very often, when we face challenges in life and we're frustrated or we're nervous, so we have an instinct that we grab for the things that are easily comfortable and soothe us only momentarily. It doesn't really satisfy us, but it's called comfort foods. And many people are guilty of this. And you find yourself, like when you're angry and you're frustrated, and you're just sitting and you're moping, then you go to the fridge, you go to the closet, you eat some cookies, you take Coke, and you half a bag of cookies or potato chips, and you gobble it down. And, for this short amount of time, it feels good. And then afterwards, you get a bellyache, and the same frustrations you had that you were trying to stifle with the magic cure-all called eating or other indulgences. And that's in psychology. There's such a thing, and that's how people with eating disorders. Very often, it's a response to terrible anxiety and trauma, and the only thing that they turn to are the things that they know since you're a baby. You're upset. You nurse from your mother, and you're comforted. So you identify comfort, physical comfort, and food with calming down. But we have to break that cycle. And really, there are two. So I was thinking like this. This is exactly the lesson. Klal Yisrael, when they got frustrated, so they just wanted a comfortable life. That's what it was. They said, they were signing him, and they said, Hashem, just give us a simple life. And maybe in Egypt, and we may be slaves, but it's more familiar, it's comfortable, it's easy. And sometimes we foolishly opt for what's comfortable and what's an instant solution, even though at the long term, it's not going to give us anything. And we're going to be left at the end of the day with the same anxiety. So I was thinking, that's the model. The truth is, women, of course, if we would be able to control our emotions, our instincts 100%, so we'd be able to control our eating and our frustration and not turn to the comforts that soothe us artificially. That Hashem created a man and a human in that way, that's the struggle until we perfect that balance between the two. So the Torah is giving us a lesson precisely here, where the Torah separates Misainim kvetching, anxiety, and Esavu with the pasuk of Vahibin Sarah and Kum Hashem v'Yafutz, trying to get rid of these urges. Because the lesson is as follows, and the Hashem told us a lesson in human nature. I know the pregnant women, they know ideally, they know logically, you don't eat certain foods, it's detrimental. But the fact remains, when you're carrying a baby and it's pain and it's frustration, you can't sleep on this side, can't sleep on that side, and it's a 9-month ordeal. So what do people do? They turn to comfort food. And Hashem knew that that's the nature of a human. Maybe that was instructive in this lesson when they were told between this time when they were struggling with their emotions and their need for material urges as some sort of a pacifier, and the yearning for that to go back to some semblance of normal life. Hashem taught them when they told them, there was a lesson in the man itself, and that's really, if they would think, why Taka did God take that away from the time? They're not going to think of anything. No, because people, the natural instinct is that people do not necessarily what is healthy, but what is comfortable. We opt for what is immediately comfortable and soothes us, even though we know. And obviously, the avodas Hashem is to be able to get beyond the difficulty and accept the difficulty and know that when we refine ourselves, we'll get there much healthier. So that's what I think is the Messianim, the Savotaiva, and the lesson of Badafka, these foods that, of course, ideally, no one in their right mind would do detrimental to themselves. But we do so often, and that's the lesson. Human nature is we do things detrimental to ourselves when we don't get control of our emotional strife and stress, and we turn to things that soothe us. And that's really what Averis is about. That's when we turn away from Hashem, because usually it's not just because we just want pleasures. It's usually because we're dissatisfied and we look and we instinctively grab for things that make us happy. So now I want to read you something. One of my favorite authors in the Madea magazine called Inyans, and not Inyan. I think it's I forget what's called the other one where they have like more editorials. And so there's one article written by an Avrech. His name is I think Avram or Dov Fuchs. It's called An American Yerushalayim, and he's a teacher he teaches obviously in some American yeshivas. And he's writing an article about now, because he's living in Eretz Yisrael and the students never came back after Pesach. So he's doing Zoom, all kinds of crazy hours of the day. And he's working from his house because there's no yeshiva to go, the boys aren't there. So he says, he once told the boys it's important to exercise. And he says, it's good for the body and for the soul. And then he writes comically, he says, personally, I have begun walking to work, both there and back. Although I admit I'm working out of my bedroom. And then he says, another rigorous workout I do is the power walk. I have become somewhat of a pro with quick sprints back and forth to the pantry. Interestingly, I find that there's no limit as to how many times I can open and close the fridge. It's almost as if I'm expecting something new to miraculously appear. As I pondered this strange phenomenon, I realized that even when I was the one who went shopping and I myself put away the food, I still frequent the fridge knowing exactly what's in there. Strangely, no matter how many times I've come up empty-handed, I keep going back. And then he says something really powerful here, because I'm telling you. He says something very powerful, and I think it's the aside of everything and something for all of us to really walk away with something. I think it's deep. It's something we may know, but he's going to bring it home. So I've come to understand something about myself. My foraging has nothing to do with food. In all honesty, and the truth hurts a lot here, I'm actually not even hungry most of the time. The impetus for my scavenging, the kitchen, is not starvation. There's something else gnawing deep inside. There's another void I'm trying to fill. The Sfarim described the neshama as ravenously thirsty for kirvas Hashem. People spend their lives and their money trying to fill a gaping emptiness. The familiar sense of hunger comes from a different dimension. And the only way to satiate the soul is with the Torah and Avodah, especially in times of distress. The neshama beckons, seeking Kedusha. It's up to us to close the fridge and open a sefer and do a mitzvah. And that's profound. And the truth is, the Shlomo Melech says it, I believe in Kelis. He says, HaNefesh lo yisimale. The soul, the life spirit, never really gets full. And really, Hashem created us with a hunger and a drive, a hunger. We're hungry, but what are we really hungry for? Lo rav lechem. It's not really lechem. Of course, we need to we give ourselves nutrients, but really, this is the challenge. This is avodas Hashem, to realize that what really satisfies us when you have a life that's filled rich with meaning and with learning and mitzvahs and purposefulness and chesed. You're so fulfilled that you don't have to run to the fridge. It's when we're frustrated sometimes in avodas Hashem, we don't get where we're going, and we sometimes react and we turn to other things to sort of fill that instinct of craving that we have. But if we realize that the craving, because the truth is, the craving for your ruchnius is never satiable, because you just want more. You feel good, but you want more because it never stops. You can never, because it's endless. Hashem creates endless opportunities. But when you're lacking that craving, we often turn and crave, and sometimes people get to the point of addiction because they're never really happy. And it really stems from frustration, like we started. It comes from a sense of restlessness and misayninim, and we're just desperately trying to find something that'll soothe us. But that's not what avodas Hashem is. And Hashem created us that way so we could come to that realization. And that's really what the lesson of the lesson of the Mun and the taste and the remove from it, it's all one and the same. We can find and satisfy our cravings when we satisfy them with ruchnius. And of course, we're allowed to eat, we're allowed to use it to fill and feel good even as well. But never can that be the objective to make us feel good. That's not the objective. It's a pleasure that Hashem gave us food. And by the way, He gave us such a present that even though you have to inject nutrients and vitamins, He gave it in a way that should be enjoyable. That's Hashem. It's not a test. Hashem loves us. He gives us beautiful fruit. You ever read any of Rabbi Miller's writings? The colors and the taste and the texture. And it's wonderful, and Hashem wants us to have it because He wants us to realize. I don't just want to pump you your nutrients. I want you to enjoy it, but that should never be the goal. That's not comfort. That's not comfort. Only comes from Avodas Hashem. HaNefesh Leisam Alei. We should conquer those frustrations that we have, and realize where the satisfaction comes from. If you do that and you're satisfied with that, you'll enjoy the breakfast, lunch, and supper, and a few snacks in between. Forgive you. As long as you don't go too often to the fridge and you don't turn into a panda and to a pandemic. May we be zeicha to be inspired. Thank you for listening to this Dvar Chizuk. This one was something I've been thinking about a lot. So I hope you enjoyed it. And I'm going to daven mincha again. Amazing. Which I haven't done mincha during the week in ages. And I'm very excited to see people, actually, but I stand there like Muhammad on the mountain. But it's nice. I feel a little bit inspired and elevated, not just in how high I am, but just being together with the Olam. Thanks. Great to see everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. Mitzvah Hashem. We will continue tomorrow.
Bye.
Good